It's another week, another set of bad actors, malicious files, and compromised systems. On today's show, we're going to be talking about some of the intel being shared by our awesome InfoSec community, and a huge thank you to all those folks that take their time to share the knowledge with the rest of us. If you enjoyed listening in on these intel chats and aren't in our community forum yet, then you should join the conversation. Lots of information is being shared there, and you will get it in real time. You can join us at community.limacharlie.io. And as always, for these conversations, I'm joined by the one and only Matt Bromley. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey, what's going on, sir? Chris, how you doing? I'm fantastic, man. I'm looking forward to record today. We got some cool stuff lined up for us. Number one. Number two, it's summertime, at least in the US, as per school schedules go. It feels like it's starting to get close to summer. Everyone's starting to wind down and stuff. So here we go back into the throngs of I need to find a way to mute either the conversation or the kids, one of the two things. But either way, looking forward to our episode this week.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. We missed a week there just because of the busyness of life. And so some of these stories might seem like they're a little bit out of date, but definitely worth talking about. So I'm going to just jump right in. We're going to start with two significant crypto security breaches that occurred in close succession this month, affecting both decentralized and centralized platforms. On May 22nd, Cetus, a decentralized exchange built on the Sui Network, was exploited via a vulnerability in its automated marker maker, or AMM. Attackers manipulated the protocol to gain large positions with minimal capital and drained around $223 million in digital assets within 24 hours. While Cetus and Sui Network managed to freeze a significant portion of the funds, the scale of the incident highlights how a single code flaw in DeFi infrastructure can result in outsized losses when left unchecked. Smart contract audit trails and more stringent fail-safes may have helped, but in this case, the exploit moved faster than the response. Meanwhile, Coinbase confirmed what it called a targeted insider threat operation that compromised data from less than 1% of its active monthly users. Unlike the DeFi-focused Cetus breach, this incident was human-driven. Overseas customer support agents were bribed and recruited by attackers. They abused their access to internal tools to extract sensitive customer data, including contact information, masked social security and bank details, and images of government-issued IDs. Importantly, user passwords, private keys, 2FA codes, and wallets, hot or cold, were not breached. The attackers tried to use the stolen data in phishing campaigns and demanded a $20 million ransom from Coinbase, which was refused. Instead, Coinbase offered a $20 million bounty for information leading to the arrest of those responsible. I got to tip my hat to the folks at Coinbase. Not only did they shut this thing down fast, publicly share information fast, but that little spicy bit where they took the ransom demand and turned it into a bounty is just like the perfect icing on this.
So, Chris, the first thing that came to mind when I saw the Brian CEO's message about this was I don't know how many people have watched this thing, and I know this guy is a little bit of a stigma around Hollywood, but Mel Gibson in the 90s made a movie called Ransom. And I don't know if any of our listeners have seen it. By all means, let me know. But in that movie, he takes the kidnapper. His son gets kidnapped. This part is in the preview, so I'm not spoiling any surprises, right? But he takes the bounty that the kidnappers asked for to get his son back because he's a rich guy, and he goes on live media and he's like, "I am offering this reward." I think he might have doubled it to anyone who led to the capture of the kidnappers or returned his son and stuff. And I when I saw Coinbase do it, I was like, yo, these guys have been watching some movies, because this is some, for lack of a better term, this is some gangster like moves right here, right? Turning around and being like, not only am I not going to pay you, I'm going to pay someone that leads to the arrest of you. And I love this because in the movie, and kind of the thing I got out of Coinbase was like, how many friends do you actually have? You know, like how many friends do you have now? Will your friends turn you in for $20 million? And
Probably.
I thought it was a cool move, number one. Now, if we focus on the incident response side of things, amazingly quick turnaround from the team at Coinbase. You know, hats off to the incident response team, the security team over there for doing what they did. I do love the transparency. I love how open they were about what happened, what they saw, what they found. Not only are they going to offer this bounty for information leading to the rest of those responsible, but they're also going to make all of the impacted customers whole. One, two. By the time the message was broadcast, Chris, they had already identified all the impacted customers and had already reached out to them. Like, Folks, this is what true data mining and analysis gets you. I don't know any other way to phrase it, but like these are the high level questions that get asked during any and all incidents that happen. How many customers have been impacted? Who are they? What do we know about them? What are the dollar amounts? Like all these things happen. And Coinbase is able to just rattle them off and just be like, we're going to notify all the customers. We're going to make everyone whole. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Like what a complete control of the situation. And I was reaching out to a friend of mine who teaches incident commanding and incident management. And he was like, they're rewriting the playbook for what successful incident management looks like. And just love it. Love the story all around. Really happy to see that this come to light. Obviously, not ever happy to see that a breach took place, but wow, when a company turns around and does things the right way, it sure is refreshing to see.
And I think this attack is, I think we've talked about it before. It heralds things to come where I believe that insider threats are going to become more and more of the norm as, security systems become more sophisticated and the prizes become bigger. It's going to be easy to identify people in financial distress that work for companies by scanning social media with AI and taking different tactics like that and finding the person that for 10 grand will go plug in a thumb drive for you or something like that. So something I'm going to put my mark down now, and we'll see over the next 6 months if we see more of this stuff.
Super happy to talk about this. It's a really refreshing case, and I'm excited. I think to see kind of how this paves the road, or maybe sets the bar for organizations in the future, for sure.
In terms of damage control, Coinbase has begun reimbursing affected users who were tricked into transferring funds through scams tied directly to this breach, provided the activity occurred before May 15, 2025. The company also took swift internal action. All compromised support agents were terminated and referred to law enforcement agencies. Coinbase is now ramping up countermeasures to mitigate future insider threats and social engineering risks. These include the creation of a new US-based support hub, improved verification protocols for high-risk accounts, expanded monitoring of internal access, and running red team simulations to proactively identify security gaps. Coinbase is using the incident to reinforce key operational security messages. They've warned users to never share credentials, 2FA codes, or follow unsolicited wallet migration prompts. They're also pushing best practices like withdrawal allow listing and hardware-based 2FA. While the scope of the compromise was limited in terms of percentage, the breach has renewed discussions about the vulnerabilities of centralized platforms, especially when internal controls lag behind threat actor capabilities. Taken together with the Cetus exploit, these incidents underscore the ongoing tension between convenience and security in the crypto space and make a strong case for the adoption of self-custodial tools like Best Wallet, which reduce reliance on centralized third parties for both data and asset security. So yeah, the crypto prize is going to continue to drive all kinds of innovations and threats. So
Yeah. I think we'll be here to report on most of it, but it's also an interesting take, I think, Chris, because crypto is still feels very much like Wild West to a lot of people who are out there. It's still the same systems that we're used to seeing, right? They're still SaaS platforms or cloud hosted systems. It's still, databases of users and access controls and everything like that. But in this case, the access to a stolen account or the ability to get an insider, on your side, if you will, the insider threat, the financial ramifications are so huge so quickly, and I think that's the crazy part where it really changes the stakes of detection and response here. And what I mean by that is if we compare to kind of, whenever we talk about these long-standing traditional APT style actors, they've been inside of environments for weeks or months, or there's a ransomware threat actor was in an environment very quickly, and then they launch a ransom, then they got to go and negotiate for payments, and there's a whole method to that and everything like that. Once these guys are in and they get an access to an account, if there's money in that account, it's gone.
it's gone.
Like it is gone like that. And I think it just kind of raises the stakes of you need to be prepared with as much data as possible to counteract these types of threats because they're quick. When they happen, they're just too quick. And again, hats off to the IR team there for working what I'm assuming is probably quadruple overtime, but really, really, kind of delivering on that.
Yeah, and it's wild too, because if you think about it, $223 million, which was at risk in the Cetus breach. I know they recovered a lot of it or froze some of it, but think about just physically trying to rob a bank for that much money. You would need a semi-trailer truck to get it out of there. It's just physically impossible to steal that much money.
Yeah, you would.
But crypto, it's gone in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Hold on. It's a wild, different experience. But again, I'll conclude with Coinbase team. You did us all proud. You did us proud, and like you guys really delivered. I hope there was an amazing, like really good high five at the end of that briefing, because it was a great video to watch. And to the Coinbase executive team, I'll just finish with this too. Like, what amazing control. I mean, I'm just really kind of, Chris, in awe of just the whole team, because this was, I'm assuming, an incident where there was multiple opportunities for some sort of a freak out to happen and some executive to lose it, or customers to get outraged or something like that. But Coinbase did everything by the book. They did everything right. I think this is one of my favorite stories that we've reported on so far this year.
Awesome. Okay, next up, a threat group identified as Hazy Hawk has been systematically hijacking cloud DNS resources tied to well-known organizations, including the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC. Since December 2023, instead of directly compromising systems, the group is exploiting misconfigured DNS records, specifically dangling CNAME records pointing to decommissioned or abandoned cloud resources such as AWS S3 buckets or Azure apps. These misconfigurations allow attackers to assume control of the reference domains and redirect users through traffic distribution systems, or TDS, to malicious endpoints. Unlike traditional domain hijacking via phishing or account compromise, this technique is more subtle and takes advantage of lingering technical debt in DNS infrastructure. According to researchers at Infoblox, domains hijacked by Hazy Hawk serve as launch points for malware distribution, ad fraud, and scam campaigns rather than state-level espionage. Victims span government agencies, universities like UC Berkeley, healthcare providers, and major consultancy firms, including PwC, Deloitte, and Ernst & Young. The threat actors leverage the reputational trust of these domains to improve search engine rankings for malicious URLs, increasing their reach and effectiveness. The attacks are not automated in a trivial way. Finding vulnerable CNAME records requires significant manual effort and knowledge of cloud provider behavior, DNS query patterns, and access to commercially passive DNS databases. So I think this one is a reminder that you need to have good audit controls and review of all your infrastructure on a regular cadence. This is usually the kind of stuff that comes with good compliance. I don't know what to say here, just like clean your stuff up.
Yeah. No, I think this is another example, Chris, of just good hygiene. And now, I'm not going to give adversaries compliments. We don't do that around here. But this is a pretty well thought out attack. I think, it doesn't really take like a mastery of DNS to understand what happened here. But as you mentioned, this is not trivial, right? It took a little while to go and perform all this analysis and figure out what was vulnerable here and what they could take over. So I think that group definitely did some of their homework to get to a point of success here, number one. Number two, I think this is one that really lends towards like just good hygiene. I didn't think we'd ever use the words like DNS hygiene as a term. And I'm sure there's some sort of tool out there you can use to scan your entire DNS records and be like, hey, this exists, this doesn't exist, and stuff like that. That might even be a thing. But I think those are like the types of scans that now we just have to conduct. Kind of like when a user leaves, Chris, you block all their access and kick them out of the environment and stuff like that. When you don't need a CNAME anymore, you disable it, you shut it down, you turn it off, you delete it, and let that propagate throughout the system. I do love the example that was kind of given in the blog post here, which talks about kind of leaving a forwarding address to a location where you're no longer present. So an adversary moved into your house and they can receive anything that's forwarded to that address. And I just look at that as like, interesting. That's a really interesting way to phrase that and think about it. But when you think about it from a physical perspective, that's exactly what's happening. Someone's taking advantage of like a loose or a dangling CNAME. Interesting term. But nonetheless, I think that in this case right here, this really speaks to one of those kind of classic discussions, Chris, of the speed of cloud development versus security implementation. So as the blog post called out, right, Hazy Hawk was going after CNAME records that were pointing to cloud-based resources, like an app on Azure or AWS. And you might talk about this one a little bit further, but it was pointing towards cloud resources. So I'm imagining at some point in time, this was a legitimate app that actually existed. It was given a domain or a subdomain or whatever it might have been at some point. And the unraveling of that should have been part of deleting the CNAME record as well.
Hmm.
So I'll just finally conclude with I think the best turnaround here is honestly just cloud deployment hygiene, including DNS records.
Yeah, especially at an organizational level. Like, I'm totally guilty of some of my personal stuff having like lots of cruft in the DNS records just because, life. But as an organization, this is the kind of thing that should be part of your yearly audit when you're reviewing account access and stuff like that. You should be checking API keys and DNS records and all that stuff. So if it's not on your list, talk to your compliance folks and get that done. All right, so Hazy Hawk's operational mode includes redirecting unsuspecting users through cloaked URLs that sometimes appear in high-ranking search results, a tactic uncovered during an investigation into suspicious links on a CDC subdomain. These links led to explicit content and clickbait-style promotions, such as streams for British soccer games. Once a user clicked on the bait, they were met with a fake CAPTCHA designed to add a veneer of legitimacy before being redirected based on geolocation and device type to a range of scam sites. Payloads included malware, fake antivirus apps, cryptocurrency schemes, and tech support scams, with many of these attacks exploiting notifications as a delivery vector. The sophistication and persistence of this campaign demonstrates that Hazy Hawk operates in a methodical way, extending beyond opportunistic abuse to targeted reconnaissance of cloud DNS misconfigurations. Infoblox researchers suggest that the group likely operates out of Eastern Europe and may be connected to established Russian cybercriminal ecosystems. Preventative steps include regular DNS audits, immediate removal of records tied to retired cloud assets, and increased user education, particularly around declining browser push notification prompts. These types of attacks highlight how lapses in DNS hygiene can have far-reaching consequences, even when no direct compromise has occurred. So yeah, I think we beat that one to death. Clean your stuff up, audit your stuff.
Clean your stuff up. I love it.
Okay, next up, a newly discovered vulnerability in Windows Server 2025, dubbed BadSuccessor, has raised major concerns among enterprise administrators managing Active Directory environments. The vulnerability, revealed by Akamai researcher Yuval Gordon, is a privilege escalation issue that could allow attackers to compromise any Active Directory user regardless of their initial access level. What makes this especially concerning is that the vulnerability functions with default configurations and does not require advanced skills or tools to exploit. Worse still, as of now, Microsoft has not released a patch for it. I'll throw in a caveat that I put these notes together last week, so I'm assuming there's a patch for it by now. But do your research. Don't take my word for it. BadSuccessor takes advantage of a relatively new feature in Windows Server 2025, Delegated Managed Service Accounts, or DMSAs. These accounts were designed to simplify and automate service account management, but the implementation has a critical flaw. In 91% of Active Directory environments, Akamai analyzed there were non-domain admin users with the necessary permissions to exploit this flaw. Specifically, the attack only requires write access to the MSDS-group MSA membership attribute, access that many users already have unknowingly. Even domains not actively using DMSAs are vulnerable if they have a single Windows Server 2025 domain controller deployed. So I'm not sure if this is being exploited in the wild, but it sounds like something that you should probably take note of and check the patch and maybe turn off that MSDS attribute if it's there.
Yeah, no, I can't agree more, Chris. You already beat me to it. Patch, if you can, right? BadSuccessor, what a wonderful name, being sarcastic here about the particular thing. Details of it, privilege escalation vulnerability impacting Windows Server 2025. I think the kind of words here that were given out with this, right? Compromise any user, trivial to implement, and works with the default configuration. Oh, and by the way, since we're talking about it and since it's our thing, as of the writing of this article, meaning the one that we're reporting on here, there was no patch available. Yikes! That's not good. Not good at all. So this is an opportunity, I think, for any security or detection team out there to recognize and to say, all right, I've got kind of the sum of all fears, right? Really easy to exploit, can be done inside of a domain environment. Can use a default configuration. Wow, how do I go about and test for this particular thing? How do I go about and figure out what's happening here? And Chris, as you mentioned, right, requires write access to a particular group, an access that many users have unknowingly. the route that I would go here would be to think, if I go and I launch this particular script or I do this thing, what types of indicators get created? What types of traffic gets created? What types of event logs are created? If this particular group is used or abused, if something's happening, and I'm just going down the list of where my head's at with, like, you say it's unpatched right now. Doesn't mean it's unpatchable, but it means it's not patched right now. How do we go about detecting this if it's out there before it gets weaponized? Run it yourself. Chris, you're going to talk about in just a moment a PowerShell script that can be used to audit. I think Akamai is releasing that for folks to use, but I would go as far as to say, what else does this script do? And can we detect for anything along the line there? And use that as a good way to bolster your domain specific detections as well, or your Active Directory specific detections, which I think are always good to have in place, Chris. And this tends to be a little like an unearthed corner of a lot of folks in a lot of enterprise environments, where it's, kind of like domain level operations, which often exist only between domain controllers of certain types of servers, or group or permission based stuff. So delegated managed service accounts tends to be something not a lot of security folks kind of get in the trenches of. It's more of a domain admin or a sysadmin type of role. Reach out to those folks and say, hey, how do we go about like figuring out what's happening here? What does this look like? Utilize the script that Akamai provides. And really, like, security teams, I'm looking at this as an opportunity to say, hey, I need to figure out a way to detect if something happens here, or we revoke access to this group for those users if it's not necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, and I got to say, a little bit of a weird move by Akamai to release this before, doing responsible disclosure and making sure a patch was out by Microsoft. It seems like something a larger company like them would know better than to go ahead and do.
I think it's an auditing script. So if I read from the article here, organizations and admins need to identify which users have the permissions to make this attack possible, and if so, remove unnecessary ones, and they're releasing an audit PowerShell script for that. So not an attack one, an audit one. At least I'm hoping that's all this is. I hope there's not sort of like
Sure.
some test bed inside, Chris, which is like, hey, here's how to launch the attack. We've confirmed you're vulnerable. Oh, and by the way, here's the users, or something like that, right? Just keep it at the second part. We
Yeah.
don't need the first part.
All right. So Akamai released a PowerShell script alongside their disclosure to help organizations audit which users have the permissions needed to exploit BadSuccessor. The script highlights accounts with risky privileges, allowing security teams to prioritize mitigation efforts. Gordon emphasizes the urgency, noting that although there's no confirmed exploitation in the wild, most organizations aren't actively monitoring for this type of abuse, meaning it could be happening undetected. Microsoft's response to the issue has been measured. They rated the vulnerability as moderate severity and stated that it does not meet their threshold for immediate patching because it requires elevated permissions. Still, they acknowledge the risk and intend to address it in a future update. Their position is that the attacker needs to write access to MSDS-group MSA membership, which enables setting a privileged account that the DMSA can impersonate. Until a fix is deployed, Microsoft recommends that organizations audit permissions related to DMSAs and remove unnecessary access to mitigate exposure. Admins are advised to follow Akamai's guidance and treat this as a live threat in the meantime. Yeah, so they didn't publish any exploit code, but I wonder, by providing the information that they did, how long it would take somebody to go find the flaw. You're basically saying, well, somewhere over here, there's a thing that you can do that will give you access.
I'm right there with you. Trust me. Exercise caution when we're running external scripts, everyone. You never know what you're going to get.
All right. Okay, last, I saved this one for last because these ones always put a smile on my face. Federal and international law enforcement, alongside a significant number of private sector partners, have successfully dismantled the Danabot botnet in a multi-year operation aimed at neutralizing one of the more advanced malware-as-a-service platforms tied to Russian cybercriminal activity. The U.S. Defense Criminal Investigation Service, or DCIS, led the seizure of U.S.-based infrastructure critical to Danabot's command and control capabilities. CrowdStrike, which tracked the threat actor under the name Scully Spider, confirmed that the operation disrupted the malware's ability to issue commands, update payloads, or perform further malicious actions through its botnet of infected machines. The U.S. District Court for the Central District of California has unsealed indictments against 16 individuals believed to be part of the Russian-based group behind Danabot. The malware was initially identified in 2018 as an info stealer and banking Trojan, but evolved into a broader platform offering services to affiliates, including payload delivery for ransomware campaigns. This model positioned Danabot as a central piece in a wider cybercriminal ecosystem that operated much like a traditional business, complete with infrastructure, support, and a sales strategy targeting malicious actors. It makes me so happy to see these things get pulled apart, especially something like Danabot that's been, central to so many of these hacks that we've reported on.
Hey, Chris. Yeah, right there with you 100%. Always a fan of when we get to report these types of things, number one. Number two, a huge international hat tip to all the different parties that were involved in bringing this down. Private, public, all over the globe, multi-year. Let's see here, DOJ indictment that I know you're going to talk about in just a moment here. But I love reading about these kind of really wide cooperative efforts that take place, number one. Number two, they're bringing down a pretty prolific malware as a service platform as well. The U.S. Defense Criminal Investigative Service, or the DCIS, the U.S. DCIS, led the seizure of it here. Found that the threat actors had C2 servers inside of the U.S. So we're able to easily just say, hey, it's on our soil. It's really easy to take down, number one. Two, I love seeing these types of impacts happen. Now, every time we talk about one of these, we always kind of hypothesize, like, well, who's going to pop up next or who's going to be there instead? And folks, let's take the wins where we can get them. Whenever we see threat groups like this, threat actors like this being brought down, and we see kind of maybe a bump in the road or a hurdle being put in place for these types of platforms or these types of criminals and threat actors, let's celebrate it. Let's celebrate it and let's use it. Let's continue, bolstering our security programs and building good detections and stuff like that. It doesn't mean we can just write off everything that this team has done. They might have sold code to others. They might have sold infrastructure to others. Their effect will definitely be long tail. But that doesn't mean that we can't celebrate and say, hey, Danabot was taken down Danabot was taken down, number one. Number two, it's always a good thing when I think you see a private company like CrowdStrike kind of being at the helm of this or being very involved in this, Chris. The CrowdStrikes, and I'm trying to find the name of it really quickly. They have like an adversary team. I'm trying to remember what their name is exactly, but I thought I had it. Never mind. CrowdStrike's got like kind of like an adversary response team, who I think did a really good job of like offering the right type of support and assistance. It's one thing when like the justice departments around the globe or law enforcement get kind of left on their own to do stuff. It's another thing when we get private IR companies who are bringing their case knowledge to the table, coupled with jurisdictional purview and other types of legal enforcement capabilities. And I love when this, not course, but I love when this combined cohesive effort takes place. It's obviously not the first time we've seen it done, but just a final hat tip to everyone here, right? 16 defendants being federally charged. Chris, I know you're going to talk about a couple of them in just a second here, but I'm a fan. Let's celebrate and let's make this happen. So, in today's episode, we've got two really great wins here, and I'm going to celebrate both of them.
I'm with you on that. The indictment names Alexander Stepanov, or Jimmy B, or Jim B, and Artem Kalinkin, or Onyx, as primary figures in the Danabot operation. Stepanov is alleged to have been the main developer and infrastructure administrator, while Kalinkin handled co-administration duties and led commercial outreach on underground forums. They reportedly collaborated with authors of other tools, such as Matin Bucus, to offer bundled deals, further extending Danabot's reach. According to ESET, at its peak, Danabot had a robust feature set, including data exfiltration from browser and FTP clients, key logging, real-time remote control, screen capture, and arbitrary payload execution. It also supported Zeus-like web injects, which made it especially potent in credential theft operations. The broader investigation revealed a well-organized affiliate network where threat actors rented access to Danabot's capabilities and conducted their own infection campaigns, often using phishing emails with malicious links or attachments. Affiliates were equipped with tools such as an admin panel, a proxy relay server, and back connect module for bot management. Notably, although the operators were not officially state actors, both CrowdStrike and ESET highlight how the Russian government not only tolerated their activities, but also leveraged Danabot for nation-state operations, specifically citing its use in DDoS attacks against Ukrainian targets after the Russian invasion began. This blending of criminal infrastructure with state-aligned objectives underscores a broader tactic by the Russian government to use non-state actors as proxies. CrowdStrike found that certain Danabot sub-botnets were likely created for espionage-related tasks, further supporting the view that these cybercriminal tools were co-opted for geopolitical ends. The takedown, which included support from law enforcement agencies in Germany, the Netherlands, and Australia, as well as tech companies like Amazon, Google, and PayPal, marks a strategic response to this hybrid threat model. Still, with the key figures behind Danabot still in Russia and unlikely to be extradited, the possibility of regrouping or retooling remains a concern for the future. So I find this super interesting. One, because the point you made earlier about how CrowdStrike, a private company, was working with, public legal institutions to do the takedown. But then on the other side, we have the cyber criminals also working with their government to do what we're deeming illegal things. I'm sure from their perspective, it's also different. But cybersecurity is this weird thing where the private and public are mixed. It's an interesting space.
Yeah. Yeah, Chris, you hit that one like right on the head. That's a great spot to focus on. I mean, to find out, or I should say to figure out that this Danabot, this activity was being used, I should say the DDoS capabilities were being used by nation state operations. It just goes to speak, I think, of the prevalence of these threat actors in those regions, why they choose to live and build and survive in those regions, because they know nothing's going to happen. In fact, they might even get co-opted into the might even get co-opted into the national cause. Who knows?
Yeah.
I think it just really speaks towards kind of a cultural approach in the area, of like, hey, this is a thing that we allow, and we allow it so much that we might even use it at one point in time, because I'm not going to spin up my own DDoS infrastructure. If I'm trying to DDoS a country that I'm invading, I'm just going to use the guy who's already got it in place. And that's a pretty risky, dangerous thing. I think, though, Chris, what that does is that also expands jurisdictional capabilities. You and I have talked before about kind of like this concept of like cyber warfare and stuff like that. And I mean, if you're a military sponsored unit and you actively engage a private citizen's company to launch a digital attack against another nation state you're invading, what does that do jurisdictionally? Number one. Number two, is that kind of like the hand wavy thing of like, this is now a national security project, so no one can touch it kind of thing? I mean, you're guaranteeing immunity in a non-extradition country, number one. But number two, aren't you kind of putting a target on these people? I mean, the indictments are against the Danabot team, whatever the name is. It's not really against the Russian threat actors, as far as I can tell, the state nexus threat actors, in which case, cool. So it's also a transfer of risk. Let's make those guys do it so that they don't know it was us.
Huh. Funny world. Well, Matt, thanks again for coming out. For anybody that made it this far, it's hard for me to express how much lag we've been dealing with during the show. Hopefully we'll have that cleaned up in post-production. So if you made it this far, just like congratulations and apologies for the bumpiness on this one, but we wanted to get it out because we missed last week. So after this, I'm going to start pulling apart my network to see what the heck is going on, because there's definitely something not working right.
Well, Chris, it's always a pleasure when we get together. So thanks for having me. I'll talk to you next week.
All right, next week with higher bandwidth.